The great hall fell silent when High Counselor Veth raised his four-fingered hand. His pale blue skin seemed to glow under the ancient lights of the Galactic Council chamber. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species watched him with respect and fear. The Alorans had ruled this alliance for 10,000 years. Their word was law. Jiho stood alone at the human platform. He was young for a diplomat, barely 32 years old. But he had worked hard to earn this position. He believed in the alliance. He believed that different species could live together in peace. Today, that belief would be tested. "The Council has reached a decision," Veth announced. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "After careful consideration, we have determined that humanity poses a threat to the stability of our alliance." Jiho felt his heart stop. Around him, representatives whispered to each other. Some looked shocked. Others nodded in agreement. "Humans breed too quickly," Veth continued. "They adapt too efficiently. They have spread to every corner of our territory in just 300 years. More troubling still, other species have begun to prefer working with humans over their own kind." Jiho stepped forward. "High Counselor, if I may speak, you may not?" Veth's voice was cold. "The decision is final. Humanity is hereby exiled from all Alliance territories. You have 90 galactic cycles to remove yourselves completely. Your property will not be seized. No violence will be used. But you must leave." The words hit Jiho like a physical blow. 300 years of building, of contributing, of friendship, and it ended with a single decree. "We have done nothing wrong," Jiho said, his voice steady despite his breaking heart. "We have built your stations. We have healed your sick. We have mediated your conflicts. And this is how you repay us?" Veth looked down at him with something close to pity. "Your kind unsettles the natural order. You do not know your place. Perhaps in exile, you will learn it." That night, the news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. On Trade Station, Omega 7. Doan received the message in his engineering bay. He had worked on this station for 40 years. He had trained engineers from 12 different species. He had kept this massive structure alive through countless crises. When his alien colleagues heard the news, something changed. The friends who had laughed with him that morning now avoided his eyes. The Aloran supervisor, who had praised his work for decades, walked past without a word. Only Salim, a young Kalari technician, had the courage to approach him. "I am sorry," Salim whispered. "This is wrong. Everyone knows it is wrong." Doan placed a hand on the young alien's shoulder. "Then why does no one say so?" Salim had no answer. In the medical bay, 3 levels above, Yuna was treating her final patients. She had spent 20 years studying alien biology. She had saved thousands of lives. She had been working on a cure for a disease that killed Kalari children, a disease no Kalari doctor had been able to solve. As she packed her research notes, a Kalari mother rushed in. She carried a small child in her arms. The child was burning with fever, its scales turning gray. "Please," the mother begged. "I know you must leave." But my daughter Yuna did not hesitate. She took the child and began treatment immediately. For 3 hours, she worked without rest. When the fever finally broke, she handed the sleeping child back to her mother. "She will recover," Yuna said. The mother's eyes filled with tears. "How can I thank you?" After what we have done, Yuna pressed a data chip into the mother's hand. "These are my research notes. Everything I learned about your species' diseases. Give them to your doctors. Maybe they can finish what I started." She said nothing about the irony. She felt it, but she did not speak it. Captain Taiho gathered the human leadership on his freighter, the Silent Horizon. The ship was old, but reliable, one of the first vessels humans had built after joining the Alliance. Now it would lead them away from everything they had helped create. "We have a choice," Taiho said to the assembled humans. "We can fight this decision. We can protest in the streets. We can make them drag us out by force." He paused. "Or we can leave with dignity." Hannah, the agricultural specialist, spoke up. "If we fight, they will say we are violent. They will say they were right about us." "And if we leave quietly?" asked Jiho, who had just arrived from the council chambers. Taiho looked out the window at the stars. Then they will learn what they have lost. Not through our anger, but through our absence. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not beg. Humanity would not scream. Humanity would simply leave. Over the next 90 cycles, human ships departed from every station, every colony, every outpost in Alliance space. They left behind clean rooms and organized files. They left behind instruction manuals and maintenance schedules. They left behind everything they had promised to maintain. Doan spent his final days training Corvith, the Aloran engineer who would replace him. He explained every system, every backup protocol, every hidden danger. Corvath listened with obvious boredom. "I understand," Corvath said dismissively. "You humans always overcomplicate things." Doan said nothing. He simply handed over the keys and walked away. On the day of departure, thousands of human ships gathered at the edge of Alliance space. Yuna stood at a viewport on the silent horizon, watching the stars she had called home for so long. "Do you think they will miss us?" she asked. Taiho stood beside her. "They will. They just do not know it yet." Jiho joined them, his diplomat's robes now packed away. "I spent my whole life believing in the Alliance. I thought if we worked hard enough, if we proved ourselves enough, they would accept us." "And now?" Hannah asked. Jiho smiled sadly. "Now I understand. We were never trying to be accepted. We were trying to be equal. And that was the one thing they could not allow." The fleet jumped to light speed. Behind them, the Alliance celebrated. The human problem had been solved. Order had been restored. The silence left behind was absolute. It would not remain empty for long. 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared into the darkness between stars. The Elrons declared it a new era of purity and order. High Counselor Veth gave speeches about returning to tradition. The Alliance would be stronger without the disruptive influence of humanity. But cracks were already forming. On Trade Station Omega Savan, Corveth stared at a warning light he did not recognize. It had been blinking for 3 days. He had checked every manual, every database, every technical document he could find. Nothing explained what this light meant. "It is probably nothing," he told his team. "Human engineers love to create unnecessary systems. We will ignore it." 2 weeks later, the atmospheric processors in Sector 9 failed without warning. The emergency seals did not activate. 43 workers died before anyone understood what was happening. Corveth stood in the wreckage, his hands shaking. An investigator found the problem within an hour. The blinking light had been a warning about pressure buildup in a secondary cooling system. Doan had installed it himself after a similar accident 15 years ago. He had saved the station then. Now he was gone, and no one remembered. Why was this not in the official documentation? The investigator demanded. Corveth had no answer. Doan had tried to explain it during the handover. Corveth had not listened. 3 systems away. On the agricultural world of Kelos Prime, the harvest failed. Hannah's hybrid crops had fed billions of beings across the Alliance. She had designed plants that could grow in any soil, under any sun. She had spent decades perfecting them. But she had done most of her work through intuition and experience. It's not written formulas. The Kalari farmers tried to replicate her methods. They followed the basic instructions she had left behind. But the crops wilted and died. The soil chemistry was too complex. The sunlight patterns were too specific. Without Hannah's expert eye, the plants simply gave up. Food prices tripled within months. Rationing began on a dozen worlds. Children went hungry while officials argued about solutions. Ambassador Relum watched these disasters unfold from his office on the Aloran. A whole world. He had voted against the exile in the private council session. He had known it was wrong. But when the public vote came, he had stayed silent. He had been afraid of losing his position. Now guilt aided him like a disease. He began pulling old records. He wanted to understand exactly what humanity had contributed to the Alliance. The numbers shocked him. Humans had operated 34% of all medical facilities. They had maintained 67% of critical infrastructure. They had served as mediators in 89% of interspecies disputes. They had invented technologies that other species now depended on completely, and they were gone. All of them. In 90 cycles, Realm brought these findings to Commander Horus, the head of the Aloran military. Horus was a soldier who had never liked humans. He found their adaptability threatening. "These numbers mean nothing," Horus said, barely glancing at the report. "We are Alorans. We've built this alliance before humans existed. We will endure without them." 43 workers died on Omega-7, Realm said quietly. "Accidents happen. We will learn from our mistakes." "Children are starving on Kelos Prime," Horus shrugged. "Agriculture is not a military matter. Speak to the food ministry." Realm left the meeting feeling sick. The alliance was bleeding, and its leaders refused to see the wounds. The next crisis came from deep space. A Kalari freighter named the Blessed Path sent a distress signal. Its engines had failed in an empty sector, far from any planet or station. The crew had enough oxygen for 15 days. Protocol was clear. The nearest vessel must respond to any distress signal. This rule had saved countless lives over thousands of years. And for the past 3 centuries, the nearest vessel was almost always human. Humans loved to explore. They traveled to distant corners of the galaxy that other species considered too dangerous or too boring. They mapped new routes. They established emergency stations. They were always there when someone needed help. But now, the nearest vessel was an Aloran patrol ship. It was 11 days away. The crew of the Blessed Path waited. They rationed their air. They sent messages to their families. They prayed to gods they had almost forgotten. Help arrived on day 12. 16 crew members had already died from oxygen depletion. The survivors were barely conscious. The news spread quickly. For the first time, beings across the Alliance asked a question that had never mattered before. Where did the humans go? Merchant Talani asked this question as he stared at empty shelves in his trade hub. His shop on Station Omega-7 had once been the most popular destination for travelers. Humans had brought him goods from every corner of the galaxy. Medicine that healed wounds in seconds. Tools that could repair anything. Art that made beings weep with beauty. Now his shelves held Aloran products. Functional but boring. Reliable but soulless. Customers walked in, looked around, and walked out without buying. A child tugged on Talani's sleeve. She was Kalari, with bright green scales and curious eyes. "My mother says humans used to live here," the child said. "She says they made the best toys." "Where did they go?" Tulani knelt down to her level. He wanted to explain about politics and fear and the stupidity of powerful people. But how could he explain such things to a child? "They went away," he said finally. "Why?" "Because we told them to." That was mean. Talani looked at his empty shelves. Yes, it was. In her quarters that night, Unea's successor on, Eloran doctor, named Marin, reviewed patient files with growing frustration. A dozen cases sat on her desk. Diseases she did not understand. Conditions she could not treat. Patients who were dying while she searched for answers. She pulled up Yuna's old research notes. The human doctor had been working on solutions to all of these problems. Her methods were unconventional. Her theories were strange, but they worked. Marin tried to follow the notes, but Yuna's intuition could not be copied. Her experience could not be downloaded. Her stubborn refusal to let patients die could not be taught by mourning. 2 more patients were dead. Marin sat alone in the empty medical bay. Yuna's equipment was still there. Her charts still hung on the walls. Her presence was everywhere, even though she was gone. "Why did we send them away?" Marin whispered to no one. No one answered. The silence was growing louder every day. 2 years after the exile, the Galactic Alliance was dying. It did not die quickly or cleanly. It died slowly, painfully, like a great tree rotting from within. Each day brought new crises. Each week brought new failures. And through it all, the leaders insisted everything was fine, but nothing was fine. The war between the Kalari and the Venari, began over something small, a mining dispute in the outer territories. Both species claimed the same asteroid field. Both had documents proving their ownership. For 50 years, human diplomats had managed this conflict with patience and creativity. They found compromises. They built relationships. They reminded both sides that cooperation was more valuable than victory. Now, the humans were gone. The Elorns tried to mediate. They sent their finest diplomats. But the Kolari remembered how the Elorans had exiled their human friends. The Venari remembered how the Elorans had ignored their protests. Neither species trusted Eloran justice anymore. Shots were fired. Ships were destroyed. Within 6 months, a full war was burning across 3 systems. High Counselor Veth called emergency sessions. He demanded peace. He threatened punishment, but his words meant nothing. The alliance had been built on trust, and that trust was broken. Far worse than war was the plague. It started on a small Kolari colony, a new disease spreading faster than anything doctors had seen before. It attacked the immune system. It killed within days, and it was jumping to other species. Yuna had been researching cross-species immunity for years. She had understood how different biological systems interacted. She had been close to developing a universal vaccine that could protect any species from any disease. But her research was incomplete. The notes she left behind were partial. And the doctors who inherited her work did not understand her methods. The plague spread to 12 worlds, then 20. Then 50 Eloran physicians worked desperately. They tried every treatment they knew. They studied Yuna's research until their eyes ached. But they could not replicate her genius. Millions died. Hospitals overflowed. Mass graves appeared on worlds that had never known such tragedy. On the Eloran homeworld, protests erupted for the first time in centuries.
Ow.
Crowds shouted outside the council chambers. They carried signs with pictures of Yuna and Doan and other humans they remembered. They demanded change. High Counselor Veth watched from his window. His advisors urged him to listen. His allies warned him of revolution. But his pride would not allow him to admit mistake. "The exile stands," he announced. "We cannot show weakness." That night, 2 of his closest allies quietly resigned in the uncharted territories beyond Alliance space. The humans had built something new. Duhan stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching construction drones assemble another residential module. In 2 years, the Human Confederacy had built what took the Alliance centuries. 3 stations, 5 colony worlds, a network of trade routes that grew larger every day. They had not wasted time on anger or regret. They had simply worked. His communicator beeped. A message from Alliance space. He recognized the sender immediately. "Salim, Doan," the message read. "The station is dying. We are dying. I know you owe us nothing, but please, help us." Doan read the message 3 times. Then he walked to Captain Taiho's office. Taiho was older now. Gray touched his temples. Lines marked his face. 2 years of leadership had aged him, but his eyes were still sharp, still kind. "I received messages," to Taiho said before Dohan could speak. Hundreds of them, from engineers and doctors and farmers, all begging for help. "What do we do?" Taiho was quiet for a long moment. "They told us we did not belong. They told us we were disruptive. They celebrated when we left." He turned to look at the stars. "And now they need us. So we go back." "No," Taiho's voice was firm but not angry. "We were exiled. That means we are not welcome. If we return uninvited, we become invaders. We become everything they accused us of being." Doan understood even though it hurt. "Then we do nothing? We wait. We build. We become so strong that when they finally ask properly, we can help from a position of respect, not desperation." On the Eloran homeworld, Ambassador Relum made a decision that would change everything. He stole a ship. He falsified travel documents. He fled Alliance space alone, heading for the last known location of the human fleet. The journey took 3 weeks. When he finally reached New Haven Station, he expected to find refugees, desperate survivors clinging to broken ships. Instead, he found a civilization. The station was beautiful, clean lines and efficient design, gardens growing in zero gravity, children laughing in play areas, beings living with purpose and hope. Realm requested permission to land. He was granted it without delay. Yuna met him at the docking bay. She looked different than he remembered, stronger, more confident. The uncertainty that had marked her during the exile was gone. "Ambassador Realm," she said, "I wondered when someone would come." "I am here to beg," Realm admitted. "The Alliance is falling apart. The plague is killing millions. We need your help." Yuna led him through the station. She showed him the medical facilities, the research labs, the schools where human children learned alongside children of other species, refugees who had followed the humans into exile. "We have continued our work," Yuna said. "I finished the immunity research. The cure exists." Realm's hearts leaped. "Then you will help us." Yuna stopped walking. She turned to face him. Her expression was not angry, but it was not soft either. "You did not want us. You exiled us because we made you uncomfortable. Because we adapted too well. Because we were too good at things you thought belonged to you." She paused. "And now you need us." "Those are not the same things, Ambassador." "I know," Realm whispered. "I know they are not." "Hey, then go back. Tell your council the truth. Make them understand what they did. And maybe, when they are ready to ask properly, we will listen." Realm left the next day. He carried no cure, no promise, no hope. Only the memory of a civilization that had survived its exile and grown stronger. Back on the Aloran homeworld, Commander Aura stood on the bridge of his flagship. Below him, two allied species were destroying each other. Ships burned in the darkness. Millions were dying. He had spent his whole life believing in Aloran's superiority. He had believed that his species could handle any challenge. He had supported the exile with enthusiasm. Now, he watched everything fall apart. "What have we done?" he whispered. No one answered. But the burning ships were answer enough. 5 years after the exile, High Counselor Veth was removed from power. It happened quietly. No violence, no shouting. Just a vote in the council chamber. One by one, his former allies raised their hands against him. Species that had supported the exile now demanded change. The Kalari, the Venari, even some Alorans all voted for his removal. Veth stood alone on his platform, watching his power disappear. His pale blue skin seemed gray under the ancient lights. He had ruled for decades. He had believed himself unshakable. Now he was nothing. Ambassador Realm was chosen as the new High Counselor. He accepted the position with heavy hearts. He knew what needed to be done, and he knew it would not be easy. His first act was to end the wars. He negotiated ceasefires with patience and humility. He admitted Elaron failures. He apologized for mistakes his predecessors had refused to acknowledge. Slowly, the fighting stopped. His second act was to address the plague. Using fragments of Yuna's research and desperate experimentation, Alliance doctors had developed a partial treatment. It was not a cure, but it slowed the disease. Millions still died, but the dying slowed. His third act was the hardest. Realm assembled a formal delegation. He chose representatives from every major species. He included scientists, diplomats, and military leaders. He gave them one mission: find the humans and bring them home. The delegation's ship was called the Seeker of Wisdom. It was the finest vessel the Alliance could offer. Its crew included the most respected beings in known space. They carried a formal invitation, an official apology, and an offer of full reinstatement with reparations. The journey to human space took 2 weeks. When they arrived at New Haven Station, they found a fleet waiting for them. Captain Taiho stood on the bridge of the silent horizon. His old freighter had grown. New sections had been added. New weapons had been installed. It was no longer a simple transport ship. It was the flagship of a nation. "They are requesting permission to approach," his communications officer reported. Taiho studied the Alliance ship on his screen. 5 years ago, he had fled Alliance space with nothing but hope. Now the Alliance came to him with their finest vessel, begging for audience. "Grant permission," he said. "Let them dock." The delegation was met in the main conference hall. It was a simple room, nothing like the grand chambers of the Aloran homeworld, but it was clean and bright and filled with purpose. Doan stood at Taiho's right hand. Yuna stood at his left. Hannah and Jiho completed the human council. 5 years had changed them all. They were no longer exiles. They were leaders. Rilam's voice carried through the translator. He spoke with genuine humility, his words heavy with regret. "On behalf of the Galactic Alliance, I offer our deepest apologies. The exile was a mistake born of fear and pride. We recognize now what we should have known then, that humanity was never a threat. You were a gift we did not deserve." He placed a data chip on the table. "This contains our formal offer. It's full reinstatement of all human rights and territories, financial compensation for your losses, public acknowledgement of our errors. We ask, you two return and take your rightful place in the Alliance." Silence filled the room. Jiho picked up the data chip, studied it for a long moment. Then he set it down. "High Counselor," he said calmly, "you exiled us because we were disruptive, because we adapted too well, because other species liked us more than they liked you." He paused. "You were afraid of what we might become. And now you have seen what you became without us." Relum bowed his head. "We were wrong. Yes, you were." The silence stretched. The Alliance delegation shifted uncomfortably. They had expected resistance, but not this quiet power. Not this absolute confidence. Yuna spoke next. Her voice was gentle but firm. "I spent 2 years developing a cure for the Kaleri plague. I finished it 6 months ago." She placed a small chip on the table. "Take it. Freely given." Relum stared at her with disbelief. "After everything we did to you, you would give us the cure without conditions?" Yuna smiled. It was not a smile of anger or triumph. It was something softer. "We do not help because we are owed something," she said. "We help because it is who we are." "That is what you never understood. You thought our usefulness was our value. You thought we helped you because we wanted something in return. But that is not why humans help. We help because suffering is wrong. We help because we can. We help because turning away from pain is not who we choose to be." Relum's eyes filled with tears. In all his years of diplomacy, he had never heard such words. Such simple, powerful, impossible words. "Then you will return?" he asked. Taiho answered. "No, not in the way you want." The delegation's hope flickered. "We will not rejoin the Alliance," Taiho continued. "We'll not become members of an organization that exiled us. We'll not pretend the last 5 years did not happen." He leaned forward. "But we are willing to discuss partnership. Partnership. Nations. 2 peoples. Working together as equals. We will share our knowledge, but you must learn to maintain it yourselves. We will offer our doctors, but your doctors must be trained to replace them. We will mediate your conflicts, but all parties must commit to genuine peace." Relum understood. The humans were not rejecting cooperation. They were demanding respect. "I want us to earn your trust," he said. "I want you to become worthy of it." Jiho corrected gently. "Not for our sake. For your own." The delegation departed the next day. They carried the plague cure in their ship's medical bay. They carried hope in their hearts. But they did not carry an alliance. Back on the Aloran homeworld, Relum addressed the council. "They refused to rejoin us," he reported. "But they offered something better. They offered us the chance to become partners instead of masters." Some counselors were angry, some were relieved, but most simply looked tired. 5 years of crisis had worn them down. They were ready for change, even difficult change. "They want from us?" asked Commander Oris, who had quietly joined Relum's reform movement. "They want us to learn," Relum said. "They want us to grow. They want us to become the alliance we always claimed to be, not the alliance we actually were." The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Alliance agreed to seek partnership with the Human Confederacy. It was not the ending anyone had expected. It was not a triumphant return or a joyful reunion. It was something harder and more honest. It was a beginning on New Haven Station. Doan stood at his favorite viewport, watching the Alliance ship disappear into the distance. Yuna joined him. Do you think they will change? She asked. Du-hun considered the question. I think they want to. Whether they can is another matter. And if they cannot, then we will continue building. We will continue growing. And we will be here when they are ready. He smiled softly. We are humans. Patience and hope are what we do best. Yuna laughed. It was the first real laugh Doan had heard from her in years. No, she said. What we do best is survive. Everything else is just practice. They watched the stars together. Somewhere out there, the Alliance was learning to walk on its own. Somewhere out there, a cure was saving millions of lives. Somewhere out there, the universe was changing, and humanity waited, ready to help, but no longer willing to beg for the privilege. 7 years after the exile, Captain Taiho stood before the Galactic Council. The Great Hall was the same as it had always been. Ancient lights, towering walls, thousands of seats filled with representatives from hundreds of species. But everything felt different now. The arrogance that had filled this chamber was gone. In its place was something quieter. Something like hope. Taiho was not young anymore. His hair was fully gray. His face carried the marks of difficult years. But his eyes were bright, and his voice was strong. 7 years ago, he began, you told us we did not belong. We believed you. We left and we built something new. Something that does not need your approval to exist. The council listened in silence. No interruptions. No dismissive gestures. Just attention. We could have become your enemies, Taiho continued. We could have used our exile as an excuse for war. Many in my government wanted exactly that. They remembered the humiliation. They remembered the friends we left behind. They wanted revenge. He paused, letting the words settle. But that is not who we are. We are builders, not destroyers. We are healers, not killers. And we remember what the Alliance could have been. Not what it was, what it could have been. High Counselor Realm sat in the place where Veth had once ruled. His expression was calm, but his heart beat fast. 2 years of negotiations had led to this moment. Everything depended on what happened next. Taiho placed a document on the speaking platform. It was simple paper, old-fashioned by galactic standards. But paper did not fail. Paper could not be hacked or erased. Paper was permanent. This is the Treaty of Equal Stars, Taiho announced. It establishes a new relationship between the Human Confederacy and the Galactic Alliance. Not membership, not submission, partnership. He read the key points aloud. Human engineers would help rebuild Alliance infrastructure, but they would train local workers to maintain it independently. Human doctors would share their research, but Alliance medical schools would teach human methods to their own students. Human diplomats would mediate conflicts, but all parties must commit to genuine peace before mediation would begin. We offer you our hands, Taiho concluded, but we will not offer our dignity. We will help you become stronger, but we will not carry you. We will teach you to walk, but you must take the steps yourselves. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in the Alliance's history, every single species agreed. The treaty was signed not in the Grand Council Hall, but aboard the silent horizon in human space. Relum insisted on this. The humans had earned the honor of hosting. Du-hun watched the ceremony from the back of the room. He was not interested in politics or speeches. He was thinking about the future. After the signing, Relum approached him. You are returning to Station Omega 7, Relum said. It was not a question. I am. As an advisor only, Corveth will remain chief engineer, Relum raised an eyebrow. Corveth. After everything he made mistakes, Doan agreed, but he learned from them. He wrote to me every month for 5 years. He studied my old designs. He kept the station alive through the worst of the crisis. A small smile crossed his face. He even apologized properly, and that was enough. Doan considered the question. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about deciding that the future matters more than the past. Corveth cannot change what happened, but he can change what happens next. I will give him that chance. 3 weeks later, Doan's shuttle approached Station Omega-7. The station looked older, more worn. 7 years of struggle had left their marks. But it was still standing, still breathing. Still alive, Salim was waiting at the dock. The young Kaleri technician was not young anymore. His scales had darkened with age. His eyes carried weight. But when he saw Doan, his face broke into a smile that erased all the years between them. "I never stopped believing you would come back," Sulim said. Duhan embraced him. It felt strange to hold an alien friend again. Strange and wonderful. "I did not come back," Doan said gently. "We moved forward. You are welcome to join us." Sulim understood. This was not a return to the old ways. This was something new across the Alliance. Similar scenes played out. Yuna arrived at the Kaleri Medical Academy to train a new generation of doctors. Her first class was filled with students who had survived the plague. They looked at her with awe and gratitude. "I am not here to be worshipped," she told them on the first day. "I am here to teach you everything I know so that you will never need me again. That is my goal. Not to be necessary forever, but to make myself unnecessary. Do you understand?" They did not understand, not yet, but they would learn. Hannah returned to the agricultural worlds with seeds and knowledge. She taught farmers how to read soil chemistry. She explained the secrets of her hybrid crops. She worked alongside beings of a dozen species, sharing meals and stories and laughter. One afternoon, an Aloran child approached her in the fields. The child's silver skin was dusty from work, her small hands stained with soil. "Will the plants really grow here?" the child asked. Hannah knelt down to her level. "They will grow anywhere. That is the point. They do not care about borders or politics or old grudges. They only care about sunlight and water and patience. Is that why you came back? Because you do not care about old grudges?" Hannah smiled. "I came back because growing things is what I do, and growing things together is better than growing things alone." The child nodded solemnly. Then she ran off to plant more seeds. Jiho walked through the council chambers where he had once been silenced. The great hall was quieter now. Less proud. More thoughtful. A new plaque hung on the wall. It was written in 100 languages, one for every species in the Alliance. Jiho stopped to read it. "Strength is not the absence of others. It is the wisdom to stand beside them." He touched the words with gentle fingers. 7 years ago, he had stood in this room and been told he did not belong. Now his words were carved into the walls. He allowed himself, finally, to hope. Captain Taiho remained on the silent horizon. He was tired of ceremonies and speeches. He wanted to return to what he loved, the quiet work of building and exploring. His first officer, a young woman named Myra, found him in the observation bay. "The Alliance representatives have departed," she reported. "They seemed happy. Happy is good. But happy is not enough." "What do you mean?" Taiho watched the stars. He had watched these stars for 7 years. He knew every light, every shadow, every possibility. They are happy now because we returned. Because the crisis is over. Because they feel safe again. He shook his head slowly. But safety is not the same as change. They will only truly grow when they learn to be strong without us. Not dependent, not reliant. Strong on their own, choosing to work with us because they want to, not because they must. Do you think they can learn that? "I think everyone can learn anything, given time and patience," he smiled. "That is what humanity taught me. We were nothing once. Primitive creatures on a small planet in an ordinary system. Now we stand among the stars as equals. If we could learn, so can they." Mira looked at the stars with new eyes. "Then why do we help them at all? Why not let them figure it out alone?" "Because that is not who we are. We help because helping is human. We teach because teaching is human. We forgive because forgiveness is human." Taiho turned to face her. "They exiled us because they were afraid of what we might become. But what we became is exactly what they need. Not conquerors, not saviors, but partners, friends, family." The silent horizon turned toward home. Behind it, a galaxy was healing. slowly, painfully, imperfectly, but healing, and in the quiet spaces between the stars. Humanity waited, patient, strong, ready to help when asked. They had been exiled in silence. Now, their absence had spoken loudly enough to change the universe, and when they returned, it was not as beggars or servants or guests. It was as equals, as partners, as humans.